We have seen more diplomatic boycotts of the Beijing Olympics from several countries. How does this accelerate Beijing's break with the West, and what are the implications here?
Well, I think you're going to see a very different Olympics than you saw in 2008. 2008, the Olympics were a great boost for China's soft power. This year, it's having the opposite effect. Essentially, what we're seeing is a lot of countries are bringing up questions like China's behavior in Xinjiang and Hong Kong. So the Olympics is drawing attention to the wrong things from China's point of view.
In your recent commentary, you have said that the balance of power will not be decided by technological development, which is what we've really been focusing on, right? The developments both in R&D between the U.S. and China and that rivalry that we continue to see, but you're mostly focusing on diplomacy and strategic choices. What are the choices that both the U.S. and China are making in terms of increasing their soft power, and who's winning?
Well, both countries are engaging in a type of decoupling, but I don't think it's going to go all that far in the sense that they're too intertwined economically and ecologically to be able to seriously decouple. On the other hand, you're going to have a lot of difficult cases like Huawei and telecommunications, or like the access of Chinese to the U.S. and U.S. citizens to China. So we're going to see more difficult relations, but I don't see a new Cold War.
When you talk about the greater cognizance perhaps under this administration in terms of the different varied risks relating to China, does that mean there'll be a more sophisticated playbook on how to deal with each of these risks?
Well, I hope that we're going to get more sophisticated relations. We've had a lot of demonization on both sides. I mean, there's growing nationalism in China, which Xi Jinping is manipulating, and there's growing populism in the U.S., which has produced, oddly enough, bipartisan agreement on U.S. policy toward China. But it's very important that the two sides realize they have to manage this relationship. I call it a cooperative rivalry, and we have to notice not just the rivalry, but also the importance of cooperation. So I think the Biden administration has been moving toward trying to figure out how you manage this a little bit better. And the phone calls between Biden and Xi Jinping seem to indicate that both sides realize this.
It's a long time since the idea that perhaps China could be the champion of global liberalism, right? That famous Davos speech that we heard from President Xi. Is the risk here that this being such a key political year for Beijing, that there is policy risk to the downside because strength and competence and power is so important this year in particular?
Oh, I think that's definitely domestic politics, a key factor in foreign policy in both countries. But if you ask, how do you explain wolf warrior diplomacy, which has often been counterproductive from China's point of view? It's got to be because it's good for internal consumption, not because it's good for external consumption.
Having said that, China has also implemented some developmental aid to other economies who actually need all of that financial capital. Are we seeing more appeal for China's unique form of capitalism in the sense that they are now expanding their Belt and Road initiatives and they are getting more allies from different sources?
Well, the BRI is obviously an effort to increase China's soft power, and so is the so-called vaccine diplomacy. But if you look at the Pew polls, which are internationally reputable polls, what's most intriguing is that China's soft power, in the sense of it's attractive to other countries, has not gone up, with the exception of Africa, where the U.S. and China are basically tied in terms of the polls of attractiveness. In Asia and Europe and South America, the U.S. is still much more attractive than China, according to these polls.